Let's review a few things that you have seen in Unit 2, things that you need to make sure you know for the test. This first question is, what is the difference between the terms equality and congruence? Well, I've done a quick summary here, and like we said in class, equality talks about when numerical values are the same. So, for example, I could say that the number 9 is equal to the number 9. Or I could say x is equal to 3. We're just talking about numerical values. Congruence goes a little bit further. Not only are numbers the same, but we're talking about figures. So their dimensions are also the same, their configuration, their shape, all of their defining properties are the same. So congruence is actually a little bit more complete because it talks about the dimensions, the shapes, etc. of figures. The next problem that you have here is what is the length of the segment. Of course, you can always do this the easy way and count all the spaces, and you would know that that's 7 spaces, so 7 units long. But if this number line were really, really long and this stretched from, let's say, the number -8 all the way to the left to -323, it might be a little bit difficult to then start counting all the numbers. So a better way to do this is just to take the numbers at the endpoints of the line segment and just subtract them. And you get the absolute value of that subtraction, which means you only use the positive version. So the length, it does not matter if you do -8 minus the -1, or if you do the -1 minus the -8, because we're going to be using the positive value of the answers, it'll be the same. In this case, this becomes a plus, as would here. So then these absolute value bars mean, hey, you're only using the positive version of your answer. So you have a -7 as the answer to the problem inside, but we only use the positive version. Over here, absolute value again. In this case, the number inside is positive, so we keep it the way it is. In the next problem, they ask you to find the length of NQ. So the first thing is to identify what NQ talks about. So find where N is, find where Q is, and so they're actually talking about the length of the whole segment. Pretty straightforward. The length of a whole segment is equal to the sum of the length of its parts. So it's just going to be a 4 plus a 17, which in this case is 21 units. Moving on to the next problem. In this diagram, they give you this information, so the best way to make sense of it is to start labeling this information on your diagram. So if they say AB is 23, you find A and B and label the length in between those. Then they talk to you about BC, so you find point B and point C and you label the length between those. Then you find AC, which I guess I'll do those in red so that we can tell them apart. This is A, and this is C. So the entire length is 22x plus 4. So we need to find BC, which is this length labeled 18x plus 1, and AC, which is the entire length. Because we know that adding all the small parts of the segment is going to equal to the total length, well, that's what I'm going to write in math symbols. So this segment 23 plus the other segment 18x plus 1 should equal the length of the entire segment that we have in red, 22x plus 4. Now it's just a matter of solving this equation. There are many ways of solving. The way I teach this in my classroom may or may not make sense to you. So the way I do this is I'm going to label an x side and a no x side. Here I have 22 x's, and here I have 18 x's. So I usually choose the side that has the most x's as my x side. So I will label this my x side, and this my no x side. Once I do that, I go one by one, checking all these terms. This one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And I check to see if they are all in the correct side of this red line wall here. So 23 does not have an x, so that one checks. Then 18x, this actually does have an x, and it's sitting on the no x side, so it doesn't belong here, so I take it away. So I take away 18x. What I do on one side, I do on the other, underneath the x terms, of course, because we're dealing with x's. And we have 23 plus 1 is equal to 22 minus 18. So we have that 4x plus 4. So then I go one by one, checking again. 23 is on the no x side, so that's good. 1 does not have an x. It's on no x side, so that's good. This term 4x has an x, and it's sitting on the x side, so that one's good. So all these check. And this positive 4 does not have an x, but it's sitting on the x side. It does not belong there, so I take it away. Take away the 4, and what I take away on one side, I take away on the other. You can either subtract it from the 1 or the 23. I'll subtract it from the 23. And I have 19 plus 1 is equal to 4x. Finally, when I check all the terms on my no x side in fact do not have x's, and all the terms on my x side in fact do have x's, so I'm good to proceed combining like terms. 19 plus 1, that's a 20. Here I have a 4x. And the last step is always to divide by the number stuck to the x. So I divide by 4 on both sides. And then x is equal to 5. When we were taking Algebra 1, this would have been the end of the problem. However, in geometry, they are now asking us to use this number value, x is equal to 5, to figure out what BC and AC are. So if BC is from here to here, and that is 18x plus 1, then I substitute the value of x where the x goes. I'll find my final value. And then I see what AC is. That is this big one in red. That is 22x plus 4. So that's 22 times that 5 plus 4, which will equal 114. And these are our answers. 91 units long, and the total is 114 units long. The next problem that we have here, in the diagram, M is the midpoint of JK. When we have geometry vocabulary words like these, they are used because they mean something on how we work the problem out. They give us a hint on what to do. So I usually circle those math vocabulary terms, and on the side or below I write down the implication. Midpoint means it's the middle. If I can get this to write. Which means that both sides of the midpoint location right here, both sides are equal. Because by definition, when something's in the middle or halfway, or split in half, each half is the same. So we know that 4x minus 2 has to be equal to 2x plus 12. That's why that geometry vocabulary that's used in the instruction in each problem is so important. Please always circle it and make a note to yourself on what that term means, so that then you know what strategy to follow. So we have 4x minus 2 is equal to 2x plus 12, and we just need to solve that. So again, I'm making the x and no x side because it really helps me sort out my information. Once you're comfortable solving equations, you don't need to write an x and no x side anymore. But for now, while we get used to this, the 4x has an x and it's sitting on the x side, so that one's good. The negative 2 here does not have an x, so it doesn't go here. So I need to take it away. So to cancel out a negative 2, we always use the opposite sign. So now we're going to add 2. And what I do on one side, I do on the other. So we have 4x is equal to 2x plus 14. So now we go one by one, checking again. This 4x is sitting on the x side, so that one's good. This 2x has an x, but it's sitting on the no x side, so this one needs to go. That's not good. So we have to take away that 2x. So I subtract the 2x from that side. And what I do on one side, I have to remember to do on the other. 4x minus 2x is just 2 x's. Bring down that 14. And now we've reached our last step, which is always the same. Last step is to divide. And you have x is equal to 7. Again, don't be tempted to think that this is the end of your problem. Always go back and check. In geometry, we usually go a little bit farther than what we did in Algebra 1. They're actually asking me to find out what Jm is. So I come over here and I see that Jm is 4x minus 2. So I write it down and then I substitute the value of x I just found. And so I found out that number. The next one is mk. mk is over here, which is 2x plus 12. But because I know that jm and mk should be the same, I don't really need to substitute everything again. I know that this is also 26. And then jk, which is the entire length, should really be just the sum of the two halves, which is 52.